Hundreds are dead after a devastating earthquake and tsunami rock northern Japan.
We speak to someone on the ground in Tokyo to find out how they are coping with the aftermath. Humber News starts right now.
Hello, it's Friday, March 11th. Welcome to Humber News, coming to you from the Broadcast Center here at the North Campus. I'm Miranda Ancesol. Thanks for joining us.
And I'm Kathleen Paroff. Ahead on our show, we have all your news, sports, and entertainment highlights, as well as your 5-day weather forecast. But first, Miranda has our top story.
The fifth strongest earthquake worldwide since 1900 hit Japan today, leaving enormous devastation and an uncertain death toll. Most recent reports say hundreds of bodies have been found and countless numbers of people are missing. The quake ravaged Sendai City, the largest major city in northeastern Japan. Other cities and villages located over 2,000 kilometers off the east coast were also affected by the powerful tremors. The Associated Press says the quake hit around 2:46 p.m. Tokyo time. The quake triggered a 23-foot tsunami wave sweeping the east coast, engulfing cars, large boats, and houses. Shrouds of debris consumed large rural areas, while fires broke out amidst the destruction. The International Atomic Energy Agency says 4 nuclear plants in Japan have been shut down after fires broke out. There have been reports of a possible release of radioactive vapor, causing 3,000 residents to evacuate the town of Okoma. The 7th strongest quake that's ever been recorded in history. It had an estimated magnitude of 8.9, and there have been more than 50 aftershocks with magnitudes of upward to 7.1.
Humber News reporter Heather Alford spoke on the phone earlier today with Hiro Kumagai, a former Toronto resident and student now living in Tokyo, which is located approximately 350 kilometers away from the epicenter of the quake. He tells us what the situation is like on the ground in Japan.
I'm in Tokyo, probably about 20-30 minute train ride away from, I guess, the main city's main area. I was home by myself and I started shaking. Went on for, I think, it felt like forever, but maybe a minute and a half. It was just shaking. The Tokyo Tower, the top part is bent. I guess they have an antenna that's bent. We're having massive fires up north. Tokyo too, we had some fires, but nothing major. We're still getting shocks. We're still getting earthquakes right now, minor ones. Probably had about 15, 20 today.
The most recent reports say aftershocks continue in Tokyo. The 10-meter wave that struck the city sparked fires, and many commuters had to walk home as trains were not running. The major airport, about an hour outside of Tokyo in Narita, has just opened to some outbound flights.
As news came in from Japan, the worry about relatives and friends there and in other areas hit people in the Humber community. Humber News reporter Emery Johnston has the details.
An earthquake devastated Japan's east coast this morning and triggered tsunamis that have hit Hawaii and may be heading towards BC and other regions. Students here at Humber are concerned for the people who may be in these regions.
Some of my friends is living there and working there, but I also cannot contact them.
Director of the International Center, Diane Simpson, says her heart goes out to the people affected. She says the center is providing support for students who may need it.
A 10th-day at home for it. We've been in contact with all our other students here from Japan and are monitoring the situation in terms of other regions that are being affected by the tsunami. We want to make sure that our students get in contact with any friends and families.
Anyone with friends or family in Japan who they are unable to contact can try using the Google Person Finder. You can also contact Foreign Affairs and International Trade Canada.
For those who want to help with relief efforts, the Canadian Red Cross is encouraging people to donate by visiting their website at www.redcross.ca/help now, or you can call 1-800-418-1111. Emery Johnston, Humber News.
A tsunami warning was issued for Hawaii earlier today. Many coastal residents were sent to community centers and schools, while tourists were moved to higher floors of hotels. The islands of Kauai and Oahu recorded 3-foot waves, while waves that hit Maui were as high as 6 feet. Officials warned that the waves will continue, but any significant damage is likely over. Meanwhile, Canadians on the west coast had a scare as a tsunami advisory was also issued for the coast of British Columbia. Parts of BC's coastline saw water levels rise as much as a meter, but no damage was reported, and the advisory has since been lifted.
Air Canada, among other major airlines, have cancelled all flights to Tokyo. Meanwhile, some flights to Hawaii, but not all, have been cancelled. In Toronto, today is one of the busiest days of the year at Pearson International Airport because of March break. Authorities say they are expecting over 100,000 travelers to pass through the gates. A typical day is usually around 87,000. To keep the crowd happy, Pearson has partnered with the Juno Awards, and there will be past nominees performing at Terminal 1 this afternoon, including the Bee's Knees and Chris McCool.
And in other travel news, travel deal websites are calling this the worst year for bargain flights in a decade. Rising oil prices have caused airlines to charge up to $60 more per ticket. Also to blame is the reduced total number of flights due to the recession and increased demands due to the now improving economy.
In Toronto, those planning to take the subway this weekend should know that there are a couple of closures to keep in mind. Both are taking place on the Spadina line due to construction work on an extension to York University. The first closure is between Wilson and Downsview from 6 a.m. Saturday until 6 a.m. Monday. And on Sunday, there won't be any service between St. George and St. Clair West stations until 2 p.m. Shuttle buses will be going between the affected stations, and the closures will not affect the Bloor-Danforth line.
When we come back, we'll have more news from around the country and the world. Tom Yanni will have the sports news, and we'll have your weather forecast with Sarah Jacob.
Well, it's still raining. I'll have your weather outlook for the weekend and your 5-day right after the break.
Welcome back. Now for your 5-day weather forecast, we go outside to Sarah Jacob.
Hi guys, we are seeing a bit of a rain-snow mix today, but we are staying above zero during the day. Now let's take a look at your 5-day weather forecast. Today we're going up to a high of 3 and a low of -1, with a rain-snow mix continuing throughout the day and overnight into Saturday. Saturday we'll see a high of 5 and a low of -1 with mixed precipitation. Sunday we'll have a high of 0 and a low of -6, and the rain will stop. Back to school and work Monday and the beginning of March break for many high school and elementary school students will be seeing a high of 0 and a low of -9. Tuesday will have a high of 5 and a low of -6, but please do dress accordingly for that temperature change. And that's your 5-day weather forecast. Back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Sarah. Now turning to national news. The federal government is standing behind their original numbers and say they will pay up for their state-of-the-art F-35 fighter jets. The Conservatives are refuting Thursday's report by Parliamentary Budget Officer Kevin Page, which claims the cost will be $29.3 billion over 30 years, twice as much as the $16 billion over 20 years Peter MacKay and the Department of National Defence had calculated. Stephen Harper has also responded to the contempt findings by House Speaker Peter Milliken earlier this week, saying, "You win some, you lose some." Harper also said he will comply with the rulings and Parliament should move on.
New job creation is falling short of expectations, but unemployment rates have remained stable since last month. 25,000 jobs were expected to be created in February, but numbers came in at just over a disappointing 15,000. The unemployment rate in Canada is at 7.8%. There had been high expectations for the economy in February, especially after almost 70,000 new jobs were created in January. February's economic numbers were at their worst in 3 months.
The Bank of Canada is switching to plastic money, beginning with plastic $100 bills to be introduced in November. The Bank of Canada says the polymer bills will be more secure against counterfeiting. A $50 note will be introduced in March of next year, followed by the $20, $10, and $5 bills by the end of 2013.
Turning now to international news, Gaddafi loyalists have launched land, sea, and air attacks on Libyan rebels to reclaim the key oil port of Ras Lanuf. The location has provided Libyan rebels some protection from bombardment as pro-Gaddafi troops were forced to pull back for fear of exploding the valuable oil facility. Oil exports from Libya have already plummeted due to European Union and U.S. sanctions. Reuters is reporting that no matter who wins the standoff, the oil market will be denied hundreds of millions of barrels, reshaping the flow of oil across the world.
And now with your sports news, here's Tom Yanni.
The Humber Hawks opened the CCAA tournament with mixed results. The women kicked off their tournament with a 3-1 loss to Mount Royal. Meanwhile, the men won their opening game, sweeping Red Deer 3-0. Both teams play again today, with the men taking on the University of British Columbia at 6 p.m. and the women play Mount Allison at noon. In pro sports, the Leafs have been teasing their fans with a push for the final playoff spot. Last night they played the Eastern Conference leading Philadelphia Flyers, but missed out on a crucial 2 points, losing 3-2. The Flyers took a 3-1 lead into the third and held on for victory. Brian Boucher made 27 saves for the Flyers. Leafs got goals from Mikhail Grabowski and Joffrey Lupul, but the team has lost 3 straight and now sits 6 points out of the playoffs. Their next game is on Saturday against the team they are trying to catch, the Buffalo Sabres. It's a must-win game for the Buds if they have any hopes of making the playoffs. Outside of Toronto, 4 other Canadian teams in action, and Buffalo picks up a huge road win. Brad Boyce scored in overtime for the Sabres as they beat Boston 4-3. Senators remain hot since the trade deadline, handing the Panthers a 2-1 loss. Montreal playing against former playoff hero Yaroslav Halak for the first time since trading him this summer. Halak and his Blues beat Montreal 4-1. Predators down the Wild 4-0, and the Flames were blanked on the road in Phoenix 3-0. And finally, Alex Burrows scored the shootout winner for the Vancouver Canucks, who beat the Sharks 5-4. The Raptors are back in action tonight, squaring off against the Indiana Pacers. Raptors are in the midst of a 3-game losing streak, but if you think that's nasty, the Pacers have lost 5 straight games and have only won 3 of their last 10. Raps leading scorer Andrea Bargnani is listed as probable for tonight's game after missing Wednesday's affair with the flu. Finally, the NFL labor dispute is coming down to the wire as the deadline for a new CBA agreement is midnight tonight. The NFL and the Players Association are meeting today in their 17th straight day of mediated negotiations. The major sticking points between the two sides remain rookie-scale contracts, the owner's proposal for an 18-game schedule, and the distribution of the NFL's reported $9 billion in revenue. At this point, inside sources say the likelihood of a lockout is very real. You are now up to date in the world of sports. Back to the newsroom.
Thanks, Tom. After the break, we'll get the latest in entertainment from Trishelle Esposito.
Coming up in entertainment, Gaga hits a new record, and the Genies outshine the Oscars. All this and more after the break. Happy Friday, I'm Trishelle Esposito. Here are your entertainment headlines. The Canadian Radio Music Awards are taking place today in Toronto as part of Canadian Music Week. The award show showcases upcoming artists and honors musicians who have had success on Canadian radio this year. In other CMW news, Good Charlotte, along with Forever the Sickest Kids, hit the stage at the Phoenix Concert Theatre tonight. Make sure you check it out. Incendies was a big winner at the Genies last night, taking home 8 of the Canadian statuettes. Following close behind was Barney's version, which took home all of the Best Actor awards, despite the fact none of the trio of winning Hollywood actors were there to accept. William Shatner hosted the star-studded event. He even kicked off his monologue with a stab at this year's Oscar hosts Anne Hathaway and James Franco by saying, "I'm lucky to be here because they wanted a host that appealed to a younger crowd." Then they watched the Oscars. After being released 2 years ago, Lady Gaga's second single, Poker Face, has hit 6 million copies in digital sales. It was announced a couple weeks ago that the singer's first single, Just Dance, had done the same. This makes Gaga the only artist ever with 2 songs that have hit this mark. Justin Timberlake and Jessica Biel are no longer a couple. Reps have confirmed this by saying they mutually have decided to part ways. The two remain friends and continue to hold the highest level of love and respect for each other. Timberlake and Biel were together for 4 years. And if you're not checking out some good shows at Canadian Music Week this weekend, hit up the movie theater for some new releases. Red Riding Hood is a modern-day take on the childhood fable. It stars Amanda Seyfried and takes place in a medieval village haunted by a werewolf. Battle Los Angeles is about a Marine platoon that battles an alien invasion in Los Angeles. The movie stars Aaron Eckhart and Michelle Rodriguez. And Disney's Mars Needs Moms is an animated film about a young boy who thinks his mom is way cooler after Martians come to Earth to take her away. The movie is voiced by Joan Cusack and Seth Green. Keisha Shante is playing a show at Humber Student Center tonight at 8 p.m. The event was supposed to be hosted by Jersey Shore's Angelina, but the Guidette was unable to get a new passport in time. The event will now be hosted by Sean Desmond. That's all for entertainment. Now back to the newsroom.
Thanks, Trishelle. And don't forget to set your clocks ahead tomorrow night. Most of Canada will be losing an hour of sleep because of daylight savings time. That's all for Humber News for today. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kathleen Peroff.
And I'm Miranda Ancesol. Humber News is written and produced by journalism students at the North Campus. You can also catch us online at mediaservices.humber.ca. We'll see you next time.